Welcome to Documentary First, an inside look at a documentary filmmaker's journey. I'm your host, Josh Lindsay from the Movie Proposal Podcast. And with us is our documentary filmmaker all the way in France, Christian Taylor.
Hey, Josh, how are you?
Great, Christian. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. It can't be bad when you're in France, especially when you're in Normandy. So I'm not complaining.
How long you been there? Or how long you been in France?
So I've been here since June 2nd. So we're at 18 days, I guess. Today, recording on June 20th. And I will leave on June 24th and head back home.
So there's a lot to cover.
Yeah.
I think we should just dive right in. It has been, well, let's go back to mid-May, shall we, and pick up, because even before France, there was a lot going on. You had a screening in DC with Airbus. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, and we've talked a little bit about that, but to just reiterate, thanks to Virginia Dir, who is from Normandy and she works for Delta. She saw the film and was so incredibly passionate about that. She sort of opened up tons of doors for us. And this is one of them. So she initially brought us to Delta back last fall, and we did an event at Delta for all of the employees. Then she, during that time, one of the employees was a woman named Shalini Paselis, and she works, her account is the Airbus account at Delta. And she works very closely with Airbus, and they are located in the Washington, D.C. area. And so they wanted to have a screening of the film in that area and show their employees. So Delta flew us to DC, and we did our thing at the Air and Space Museum in Virginia, which is the Udvar Hazy location of the Air and Space Museum. And, it wasn't hugely attended, but it was amazing to see it on this giant IMAX screen. And the people that were there were incredibly passionate about being there. We had 3 cast members there, David Chapman and Teresa Warner and James Martin, who play the nurse and the sailor in the very beginning of our film. And they're also at the end. So they were there. And there were veterans organizations that were also there to see the film. So I feel like we made some really great connections and we had a wonderful event. So yeah, that was, I think, May 12th. Gosh, that just feels like forever ago, but it was only like 6 weeks ago.
So Airbus is obviously, or it's not obvious to me. Is it in airlines, or do they make Airbus?
They make, it's like a company like Boeing.
Okay.
So, and Delta flies Airbus planes. So they're Airbus 320s. I don't know all the numbers, but I know Airbus 320 is one that is flown domestically a lot. There's Airbus 350s, which are the new big, huge ones that fly, long distance internationally. So they make the airplanes that airlines fly.
So had you ever been to the Air and Space Museum before?
I had been there before.
Okay.
There are, like I said, 2 locations. The main Air and Space Museum is on the Washington Mall. And there were so many things that they just were not being able to include in that limited space. So they opened this Udvar Hazy location, and it's in Reston, Virginia, thereabouts. And it's just this really huge air hangar type, museum. Have you been there?
No, I have not.
It's phenomenal. Highly recommend going there.
All right. So you had a successful screening there, saw it on IMAX, and then you headed to New York. Is that right?
Yeah. So then on May 16th, we went to New York. And again, this was something that Delta was sponsoring. So Virginia Dir was there. Delta sponsored the pre-screening reception. The relationships had been made with the French Institute / Alliance Française, which is located in Manhattan. They really have a huge presence in New York. It is like a French school, and they have lots of kids that attend there, and it's a French association. So they have an arts department of this French Institute, Alliance Française, and they bring in films regularly. So they have a big, beautiful theater, and they hosted a Q&A, and Air France. So the film was brought onto Air France May 1st, and then Air France agreed to fly Danny and Flo from Normandy to New York. So I met Danny and Flo there and Virginia Dir there. And we also met up with the Michelin team, David Chapman and some of his crew, and Donnie Edwards and the Best Defense Foundation. So that was kind of the kickoff for the team before all the D-Day events. And that was a phenomenal screening. My favorite thing about that screening is Danny was able to talk a lot during that screening because she could speak in French, and there was a great translator for her, and there wasn't really a short time limit. So she was able to really share and talk, and I really love that. So yeah, we made some other great connections there. And one thing that I was super excited about is that the Institute wanted to show the film again to a group of school children. So, and they were supposed to do that. I think that was on the 15th. They were supposed to show that. And then the school kids came down with COVID. And so it had
Oh
to be
no.
postponed. So that was a bummer. But I hope we'll do that again in the fall because I would love for those kids to be able to see the film. So we, again, good connections made, and it was a great screening, good Q&A. And then from that screening, we spent a few days in New York with Danny and Flo, and I got to take them all over New York. That was super fun. And, we did some crazy things like the ride in New York City. Have you ever done the ride?
No.
So the ride is like this gigantic bus, and inside the bus, it's stadium seating. So like you're in a theater, and the side of the bus is all glass. And so you're sitting in a theater, but New York is the stage. And so you can see out the bus as you drive through Manhattan, and the people in New York can see you. So you're sort of like on their stage. And the
Sure.
bus has speakers on the insides and the outsides. And then surprising things happen with people on the street as you go through the town. Musicals break out. You just never know what to expect, but you get a good taste of New York City as well as a lot of the history of the town. So they love that. They love that. And they were kind of course, celebrities. I had gotten some VIP tickets and told them who they were. And so the ride made a big deal about Danny and Flo being there. So that was super fun.
That's awesome. Okay, so we've been in DC, New York, and then you headed down to Columbus, Georgia, Fort Benning.
Yeah, we were actually in Atlanta, and we were based in Atlanta. Delta brought us there for kind of the other upcoming events. And while we were there, the National Infantry Foundation wanted us to come and do a screening there. So that's in Columbus, which is about an hour and a half away. And they brought us in for a screening. And again, it was another big, beautiful theater. Not a lot of people came, unfortunately. It was raining, it was COVID. There's all sorts of challenges that way. But the people that really made a difference for our film happened to be there. And so a lot of the people in the education department of the National Infantry Museum came, and they saw the film and really believe in its message. And so they belong to a museum group all up and down the East Coast. And they really want to carry our film in the museum sort of as a standard offering. And they want those other museums to do it as well. So if we can work that deal out, that would be super for the Girl Who Wore Freedom.
Would that be income generating?
Yeah. Yeah. And, I have to say, they paid us $1,300 for that screening, even though a lot of people didn't come, because the woman that brought us in, Tiffany Hoffman, really believed in what we're doing, and she raised the money through a grant or something to put towards this screening. And that was huge. It was very timely. They paid on time, and they're willing to help us. So yeah, so that was just beautiful. I was so thankful for that. And we then spent Memorial Day. They invited us back to do Memorial Day at Fort Benning. It was very moving for me because they have all of the names of the men who died, in combat on memorial walls there. And I was able to locate the 5 names of the 5 friends that Hunter lost in Afghanistan. So it
Really?
made Memorial Day particularly meaningful for me to be able to see the names of his friends and make sure that they were not forgotten. Yeah, it was a beautiful, beautiful Memorial Day there. And we got a tour of Fort Benning, where the initial airborne school was. So they still have the airborne parachute towers that the original airborne guys practice from. So basically, they're giant towers, and the parachute, you know, inflate from up above, and they just drop them down onto the ground. And so it's hasn't changed since the 40s. So that was cool. And they love that. So yeah. And then we went back to Atlanta, and uh, Virginia Dir's son got married. So we got a wedding thrown in the mix, which was fun.
You went to the wedding?
We went to the wedding of her son. Yeah. Yeah. So we had a big wedding party. And then shortly after that is when the big D-Day event began with our dinner in the Delta Museum with the 29 World War II veterans, employees, and volunteers from the Best Defense Foundation, from Michelin. Um, a thing that sticks in my mind, I will never, ever lose it, is that night they had a 40s jazz swing band playing, and there were several veterans that got up and just wanted to dance. And it was like they were young again. And, Danny wanted to dance with them. And, so I just have these beautiful images in my mind of Danny and these veterans dancing like it's 1944.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it was beautiful just to see how much people had come together. Amazon was also a sponsor of a lunch we did the next day. They gave all of the veterans iPads, or I'm sorry, Amazon Fires. I don't know how they are going to work them, but I thought that was a lovely, nice gesture. And we did make contact with the Amazon team, and they were seriously interested in us showing the film to all of their veterans groups. So that was a lovely contact for us to make. Hopefully,
So wait,
something will
Amazon
come of
has
that.
veteran groups?
Yeah, like all of these big corporations, they all have business resource groups. This is something that I've learned as I've gone through, these corporate events. Every big corporation now has a resource group, and they really are striving for diversity. So they have diversity and inclusion groups as well, segments of their companies, and veterans are included in this diversity and inclusion umbrella. So inside the diversity and inclusion umbrella, you have a group that supports gays and lesbians. You have a group that supports the African Americans. You have and they're really talking about all of these issues that are pertinent to employees that belong in these different groups. They're trying to bring knowledge and awareness to everyone in these companies about different people. So veterans are just one of those groups, and so that is kind of where our project fits in. A company that has a diversity and inclusion section will sort of take ownership of doing an event for veterans that focuses on veterans. Um, and that's how it's been done at L'Oreal, at Michelin, at Delta. It's always through their veteran business resource group.
But unlike L'Oreal, Amazon actually has films.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So that's what I told the contact that I met. I said, we'd love to do an event. Do you think that could be a doorway into, being on Amazon Prime? And he said, well, the first thing is getting, creating this big event, getting all of our employees to see it. And, that would be huge in itself, just if the employees could see it. I mean, they have employees all over the world, and veteran employees all over the world. So, it's a start. It's one little
well,
step.
is that in the works? What's next step to do the event?
Well, the next step was for them to watch the movie, because even though they saw me, they talked to me, they had not yet, and they talked to Danny and they heard all about the film, they hadn't yet watched the film. So
Ah,
I did send them a link. I know they clicked on the link. I'll have to see if they watched it. And then the next step would be to begin to put an event together and see what happens.
that's cool.
Yeah.
So you're in Atlanta. living it up, having a good time, and then you get shipped off to France. Is that the next step?
Yeah, that is the next step. I think the morning of June 1st, we had a big event at the Delta Museum, which, if you've never, I mean, it doesn't sound like a cool thing to go to a Delta Museum. Like, I'm sure a lot of people would not have thought about that, but it was so cool. It was so, so, so cool because in this museum, you see all of these different old airlines or airplanes and just different things from the air industry from the past. And I mean, of course, I love history, but a lot of it I remembered. I mean, I think initially, I'm not sure if they were Pan Am or not, but I remember seeing some Pan Am stuff there. But I mean, I remember seeing like there's this one airplane that showed the like stewardesses section where they make the meals and they have like the little dishes that you used. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember those dishes from when I was a kid. And it goes through and you see all the airline attendants uniforms from, the 60s or whatever. And I remembered, over half of them. And so it was the same way I felt when I went to Graceland and saw Elvis's airplane. You kind of step back into the 70s and it's like you remembered airline travel back then. So I enjoyed that. That was a beautiful event where that next morning we were with the veterans and it was a autograph signing event for all of the employees. And so we had a table where people would come and meet Danny and she would sign autographs and explain the dress, and that was beautiful to see. And then that afternoon, we kind of rested, packed up, and we headed to the airport. And so our plane left at 9 and we got to the gate and there were just a huge reception of people with banners and balloons and everybody just hollering and cheering. And I think one of the things that was so fun was that the destination thing, typically when you go there, it's like, Chicago, leaves at 9 p.m. or whatever. This one was like, you're flying to Normandy. And it just said Normandy on the banner. And I think there are planes that land in Normandy and that land in Caen, for example. But this one was a one stop from Atlanta to Deauville, nonstop right into this tiny little regional airport in Deauville, France. And so when we got on the plane, Delta was so kind that gave all of the veterans, of course, first class seating, but
Oh,
I thought, we'd be back in the steerage or whatever, but they put Danny, Flo, and I in the next section, which was like the premier seating and a little bit more space and just super kind. But it gave me the ability to watch the Best Defense Foundation take care of the veterans throughout the entire flight. And I was just really blown away. They took turns in shifts taking care of the veterans who struggled to understand how to move their seats or turn on their monitors or turn off their monitors, or their legs were, they needed to walk or get up and go to the bathroom. And they were just super incredibly attentive to all of the veterans. And I loved seeing that. And they got them all ready for when we landed the next day, and we landed in this little airport. And when we landed, I think the pilots had a French flag out one window, an American flag out the other. We kind of flew or landed on the runway. And as we got closer to the gate, we got a water cannon by the fire engines, we got it when we left too in New York. And then we got it when we arrived. So the veterans love that. They could see out the window and see those water cannon salute, as they call it. And then when we pulled up, we got out on the tarmac and there were just kids everywhere singing and cheering. There was an army band. The US ambassador to France was there to greet all of the veterans. Our cast members were there, Marie Pascal Legrand and Charles Shea, and David Chapman was there to meet the plane. And then they announced all the veterans as they came off the plane, and Danny too, when she came off the plane. So it was this big spectacle. And we went from there into an air hangar where they had everything set up, a huge reception with food and champagne and New Normandy cider, all of that. And the regional people got to speak a little bit. Virginia Dir got to speak a little bit. And my favorite moment was at the end where a veteran stood up and said, you know what, these events are for the veterans. So I think a veteran should speak. And he got up and talked about how he felt about being there and felt about the people in Normandy, and talked about his experience there. So it was fantastic. That was how we arrived in Normandy on June 2nd.
That's awesome. So now you're in France, and you have more screenings. So first one was in
Yeah.
Carrollton.
Yeah, we went straight from the airport and drove straight to the town of Carentan and had our first screening at 7 p.m. And we were graced with the presence of Bob Weber, who is one of our World War II veterans that's sort of at the end of our film. I hadn't seen him since we filmed him in 2018 in Holland, Michigan. Since then, unfortunately, his wife passed away recently. So that was heartbreaking to hear. But he was able to come and be part of being in Normandy for another time. And I think he's 98 now. He used to be a history teacher in Chicago and after the war. So it was just a delight to see him. And he really enjoyed the film and enjoyed being there with the French people. So yeah, so that was our first screening. And then the next morning found us on Purple Heart Lane, bright and early. And I was super excited to see Thomas Boisson there, our friend and cast member from The Girl Who Wore Freedom. He was in charge of a presentation about the Battle of Carentan on Purple Heart Lane. And he had asked me to record the English version at home. So before I came, I recorded the story of the Battle of Carentan from my studio. But when I arrived, there it was playing on the speakers on the road. So that was fun. And I got to be interviewed for The Girl Who Wore Freedom, which was very nice of them. We got to talk about the screenings. And then Tom Rice, our veteran from Grueling Glory, showed up, which was super cool. He flew with us on the plane, so I was glad to see him. And my son Jonah, who was there in uniform from Germany, got to meet him. And there's a phenomenal picture that we will share of Tom Rice and Jonah. So that was a super, super fun morning.
Oh, absolutely. And then you got to work.
Yes.
So
Well, yeah, we did like D-Day events on 3, 4, 5, and 6,
okay.
and then we got to work.
All right. So lots of screenings, D-Day events, being interviewed. But you were there to film. So remind everyone, what are you filming, and remind me, how are you doing this without any money? So go ahead.
Great question. Yeah, so we've been working on this documentary about the town of Carentan, and we've been working on it conceptually now since the fall. We had meetings over in October when I was here with the town of Carentan when we presented the idea to them. And then Zach Callahan, our writer, sort of switched from the Brave Dutch. So we'd had all of our energies going towards the Brave Dutch, trying to get our pitch documents done, trying to write the story. And you'll remember we sent those documents to Virgil Films. They made the ask for all the streaming services, and we were turned down for funding for those things. And we were also told we really needed a sizzle reel. So when all of that was, on pause, I realized, hey, we're going to be in Normandy. We should try to film something if we can. And seriously, I was going to just film whatever I could film on my iPhone. But I mentioned that to our team, Mindy Cook and Zach Callahan, Sam King, and stuff like that. And we talked about what it would look like if we came to film some things initially for our sizzle reel so that we could then pitch it and try to raise money to make this documentary. And Mindy did an amazing job of sort of sussing out what that would cost us and what equipment that we would need to do, use if we did it on a, something better than my iPhone. And we and Zach began writing an outline for what this documentary might look like. And we really were researching characters and storylines. And then we met Chad Gilchrist. And Chad is now a Patreon supporter and a podcast listener. And I went and met with him and just to get to know him, say thank you for supporting. And Turns out shortly after that, the cinematographer that we wanted to hire wasn't able to go. And so I was like, wow, I wonder if Chad could go. And Chad thought about it and talked to his fiance about it. They're about to get married on June 25th. And they decided to jump on board, and that was a real game changer. It was a game changer for equipment. It was a game changer for experience because Chad, his day job is really grip and electric. He's worked in that department for a long time and has a huge resume on IMDb. And but his gifting and his desire is to be a DP, and he's good at that. And so this was an opportunity for him to get some really great footage for his reel, increase his skills. And his fiance Taylor is an amazing producer. So she was willing to also jump on board. They could do this together, and it could be great experience for her. And so when our team kind of built out a little bit more, and also we had a donor that gave us some money to cover a lot of the equipment costs. Um, so so really we had all that we needed, and we really were only going to be shooting for 4 days. And so I figured, well, let's try to get something done. So that's what we did. June 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Okay. And then what are you going to, and go back, and so now that you have this footage, uh, what do you do with it now? Like who's going to work
Yeah.
on it? Where are you going to show it? Like.
Great question. Well, I had a meeting today with the town of Carenton, and I was so excited about this meeting. I'll have to say, what was interesting for me is that, I said I've always wanted a do-over after The Girl Who Wore Freedom, and I wanted a do-over to kind of do things differently. And this was my opportunity to do things differently. And we did do things differently. And there were a lot of successes, and there were mistakes I made last time that I did not make this time. Uh, but I will tell you, Josh, that does not mean that there were not problems. There were absolutely problems and challenges and unforeseeable things I did not know were going to happen. And it reminded me of when you don't have kids and you think about having kids and you see other parents with their kids, you say, I'm never going to be like that parent, or I'm not going to do it this way, or I'm not going to make this mistake. I'm going to do it like this, and my kids are going to turn out perfectly, is what's implied.
Right.
If I do it this way, that it's going to be perfect. And that's not true. Like that's not true. You can think you're going to do that, but that's not what happens. So that's kind of what happened in the situation. So there were a lot of really tough, really hard things that happened during those 4 days. But I was able to meet with the city today and told them sort of like our plan and the story and what we've been working on and what we did in the 4 days filming and kind of what we're missing, what we're going to need next. They were super supportive and really behind the project. And so that made me really happy. There were things that we were not able to get this time. So we're going to have to find a way to get those a different way in order to make the sizzle reel. The plan was for us to have a person to do DIT while the shoot was going on, meaning, you film on the camera on cards, you film sound on cards, you dump all the footage onto drives, and you have somebody managing all of this media. And, in a perfect world, they're making proxies and things like that for you as you go along, so you can watch, some of the footage during the day. We, our good friend Sam King, who we love and adore, and who was supposed to be on this project with us, unfortunately got to the airport and his passport was expired, which he will tell you was a very bad mistake.
My goodness.
Rookie mistake, one he will never make again, I'm sure. It was hard for him and it was hard for us because he was supposed to handle a lot of that, media management and PA work. And so my heart was broken for him. He'd been wanting to do this for a really long time. And so that was heartbreaking. So what that meant was Mindy Cook, who was one of our camera ops, and Chad Gilchrist were managing that media, predominantly Mindy. Thank you, Mindy. for that. She did a lot of the dumping and the copying of drives so that we had two different drives. And that takes a lot. So I'm very, very grateful for Mindy doing that. She took 10 terabytes of footage home and now is in the process of getting those to Bill Ebel, who was supposed to be editing us. And we're still all working on the sweat equity mode um, because we know we don't have any money right now and we need to do this in order to get some money. But I got a message from Bill today that he's gotten booked on 2 movies and he may not have time to help us right now.
Mm.
Another curveball thrown my way.
Yeah.
So, I started trying to scramble and figure out, okay, well, what can I do in the meantime, so we don't waste time? And I kind of went back to Mindy and said, do you think you could separate all these interviews out for me? Because we did them all in French. And so it means we're going to have to transcribe them, then translate them so that I can read them. So Zach and I can put them into a script to do the sizzle reel. So we could be working on that. And then, yeah, well, I'll figure out what we have to do, but it's kind of all not clear yet. I haven't seen all the footage. I've seen some of the reenactment footage. I've seen what the interviews looked like. Things look great. Things sound great. So it'll be, interesting to see when I read the answers. Do I have, what am I missing? What pieces am I missing in order to make this sizzle reel? One of the things that didn't go as planned is that Tom Rice was in the Battle of Carentan. He jumped around La Barquette. That was one of his D-Day objectives. He was under Colonel Johnson, and we filmed right around where his story was. And so I was really hoping to interview him here while we were here in Normandy, and that did not happen. I did get a chance to talk with Flo Plana, who has interviewed him before and who is willing to help us as a historical consultant and also let us license some of that interview footage. So since we've done some reenactments around where Tom landed and fought, and since we can use that footage, now I know I'm missing a piece of talking to a Carentan survivor who can kind of testify to the events on the ground. So got some work ahead of me.
Earlier, you made reference to making, I forget exactly what you said, but big mistakes or something.
Yeah,
Can you share one of them with us?
I can. I sort of made this mistake the first time around. I thought that I had not made it the second time around, but retrospectively, I can see that I made the same mistake twice. And that was I had relied on one or two people to make schedules, get permissions, and make sure that all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed in terms of location permissions and shooting schedules and things like that. And previously, Flo Boucherie had done that on The Girl Who Wore Freedom. And she is an administrative guru. And she really is great at schedules and permissions and using lists and making sure everything is checked off. And she's very busy and has a lot going on in her schedule. And so I thought that these other people could help us with that. And there was a communication breakdown. I don't think that they understood that's what I was expecting. And so we had trouble with the logistics and permissions and schedules. And that was very challenging. So an example of that is that we got permission from a few of the towns to shoot there. I assumed that meant all of the, authorities are notified and they would know we would be there and we'd be allowed to be there. But on this one road, on this one day, there was a woman that wanted to pass by and she was very angry that we were in her way. So she went out the other way and called the mayor of Saint Côme du Mont. And uh, the mayor showed up to find out what we were doing. And fortunately for us, Denis Vandenbrink was on set that day directing the reenactment, and the mayor was friends with Denis. And so we were allowed to shoot. And that was, we sort of got by the skin of our teeth on that one. But that's just a small example. And there were more, but that was just one of them.
Well, that's just life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that that was hard for me is that there were things that were outside of our control and there were things that were in our control. And so one of the things that was outside our control is that our person in charge of reenactors did their job. They planned it out. We planned out our reenactment scenes. We knew the groups that we were working with, and everybody had committed to do that. But nobody had actually really spoken with Taylor Banowski, our producer. And so it was really, we were going through this one person, and that one person assured us everything was fine. All of the people would be there. We didn't need to worry about it and be so strict about it. I know that that is the way that things go in Normandy. So I wasn't really stressed about it. I trusted this person. They're like, don't worry about it. I've got it in hand. It's going to be fine. So I did. I trusted the person. And the problem was that there was a lot of rain during the D-Day commemorations. And so the reenactors that were here got soaked, their stuff got soaked, and they didn't want to be here any extra days to film this thing that they were not getting paid for. So basically, all of the groups that committed to working with us packed up their stuff and left. So we were supposed to have like 60 reenactors that were going to help us over the course of 2 days. And we ended up only having 8.
Oh, wow.
So that was a problem. That was a problem because the same 8 reenactors, we may have to come back to film more reenactments for the real thing because we can't show the same faces over and over again.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So that was a problem. And then the one thing that was completely outside our control, and we'll have like, I didn't want to give all this away because we're going to have Chad and Taylor come on, and we're going to have Mindy Cook come on, and other people on the Zach Callahan come on, just different people that were on this shoot to kind of give their perspective. But one of the things that was the most challenging was we were shooting at a like canal in downtown Carenton at the Bailey Bridge near the locks. And we were shooting a scene with only about 5 of the reenactors. So 3 of them were just kind of standing around. And at one point when we were filming, I hear Thomas saying, "The police are here. You have to come, Taylor." And so I watched Taylor and Thomas Boisson run to meet the police. Well, so we're finishing shooting this reenactment scene. And as we're finishing, we're getting back to where our cars are parked, and the gendarmerie are still there. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, what is going on? Well, as it turns out, there is a rule in Normandy that you cannot wear an SS uniform. Actually, it's not just in Normandy, it's all over France. And one of our reenactors, who happens to be a gendarme, wanted to have himself photographed on the Bailey Bridge in an SS uniform. And a gendarme just happened to walk by. Not so good for our project. So that created a whole hubbub and, a big mess. Why didn't we notify the gendarme? Oh, we thought we did because we told the mayor's office and we got permission. It was just, and it was, probably 2 hours lost of shooting. And then, made us feel like all of our other permissions and paperworks and things like that weren't done. That's when we kind of realized, oh, we thought all the cities that we had gotten permissions from were on notice that we were going to be filming. And we didn't know we had to contact the gendarmerie because we never did that before. And yeah, so that was an exciting adventure. And that had nothing to do with us, but it actually, we had to speak to the mayor's office and the gendarme's office about, that this was just a reenactor and it wasn't really our crew or our team. So Just another one of the crazy things that happens in Normandy, I suppose.
Right, right. Can't really necessarily plan for it. So,
No, not that one.
all right.
Fortunately, I did have someone on my team that, helped us write an apology letter and, um, we kind of got things squared away. We ended up getting what we needed to film and no one got arrested and no one got fined, which really is a miracle. And it was probably only because the guy was a gendarmerie himself. But you would have thought he would have known better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So you're getting sizzle reel footage. You're trying to find people to put this together for you, but they're busy doing other projects. So you're still working on that.
Yeah.
On a last note here, what does it look like in terms of raising money? Because the purpose of the sizzle reel is to find an investor. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm talking with one of my business consultants right now about the best way to raise money. There's several avenues. I mean, one of them is we do the sizzle reel, we make the little the pitch deck and we give it to Virgil Films and they take it to the streaming services and try to get upfront money. That's avenue one. If we do that, then they control what happens with the property. And but it then has distribution. Avenue two is that we go the investment route. We look for investors to come on board, um or we continue looking for donations. And the other one is looking for grants in the US and grants in France. I mean, it's basically the same way you always look for funding for movies. um so that's the next step.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You said you were not going to start filming until you had the money this time. Is that still the case?
Oh yeah, that's definitely the case.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I mean,
Just
this
check.
could be the end of the line. We could get this, sizzle reel done and
Right.
we don't find the money. And I mean, that's going to be true for the Brave Dutch, if I still need a sizzle reel for the Brave Dutch and we've got to figure out how to retool the Brave Dutch. Um, are we gonna try to keep it a series and raise money to do the series? We've been told it needs to be a narrative film. Are we gonna rethink it and do a narrative film? Um, where are we gonna find the money to do that? I don't know, but it looks like that's probably going to be the next 6 months to a year of my work is trying to figure out the funding for these two projects. Could be more.
Well,
My guess is it's going to be more.
okay. You never know, but better to have that
Mhm.
mindset. And
Or, I could win the lottery and fund it all myself. I don't
hey,
know.
who knows? Who
It
knows?
could happen.
But you got to play to win, Christian. You got to play to
That's
win.
true. And
So
I don't play, so that's probably not going to
that's right.
happen. Don't have any rich relatives, so that's not going to happen.
All right. Well, hey, that's quite a whirlwind. I'm glad we got everyone caught up. And again, as of the recording, this is on a Monday. You're flying home on a Friday, so next time we record, you'll be back in the United States.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very
I'm happy to
excited
be
about
home.
that.
Miss my husband and my kids. And
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, should we shift gears and
Yes.
go to our other segment? It's we like to say it's now time for DocuView Deja Vu.
Yeah. Good job, Josh.
All right, man. Still didn't feel right, but whatever. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and go first. I have a film from 1999. It's a
Okay.
documentary called American Movie. Ever
Oh,
heard
I
of
never
this?
heard of this one.
You have to check this out because
Okay.
I'll read the tagline. Documentary about an aspiring filmmaker's attempt to finance his dream project by finally completing the low budget horror film he abandoned years before. So this guy, he wants to make a movie, he wants to make a horror film. And so I don't know how they got connected to this guy, but he's in just middle of nowhere America. He has no money. He seems to have no idea what he's doing when it comes to anything. But he's not afraid to go for it, and he finds someone to finance his film, which is just some poor old guy living in a trailer park who's probably living off of his veteran's pension or something, and gives him some money, and he tries to get like, for example, like he had a scene, I think, where he needed a bunch of extras to show up, and I think they're expecting like 10 or something like that, and one guy, like his best friend, showed up. And so it's just I think it's a sweet film. It's a heartbreaking film in terms of just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this guy's doing this. I feel like there's a backstory where like it's one of those once the documentary came out, there was a cult following of the film that he made, which is not any good, but it's people are familiar with the actors and the filmmakers, and so it's fun to watch. But
What is the film, the
um,
horror film you made?
it's called Coven. No, wait, no, Coven. It's called Coven, and there's a funny scene where someone's telling him like, "Well, it's not pronounced. It's called Coven. It's pronounced Coven." He's like, "Well, that sounds like oven, so we can't say that. So we got to call it Coven," which is not a word apparently. He just didn't want to call it the right way because it rhymed with oven. So, but anyway, American movie. I'm not just look it up on. Actually, here's a good tip. There's a website called justwatch.com, and you can type in the name of your movie, and it'll tell you where you can stream it.
Oh, I love that. I'm glad somebody finally came up with that. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, so what made you watch this movie?
A friend saw it and recommended it.
Okay.
This is in the 90s, so I was in college, and I think we were watching C99. So, I think I was in film school actually. So yeah, I probably came across it around film school era, pre-VeggieTales, right around there. We were just watching a
Okay.
lot of artsy, out there kind of stuff.
That reminds me of something that happened on our shoot. Remember, we were supposed to have 60 reenactors and we ended up having 8. And the
Right.
first scene that we were supposed to film was between the Fallschirmjäger, which are the German paratroopers that sort of landed in the area, and the American GIs of the 101st. And there's like, I don't know, 500, 600, it's supposed to be 500, 600 Fallschirmjäger and, 150 or something American GIs. And or maybe it's more than that. I forget getting my scenes confused. But anyway, we have 8 guys to play both roles, 8 guys. Fortunately, they did have both uniforms. But Chad Gilchrist, and I can't wait to have him on to talk about this, came up with the brilliant idea sort of on the spot of, we are going to layer these guys. So we had them all walking in rows like 8 times so that we could layer them visually all over each other. And so that was one way that Chad compensated for having hardly anyone. And it was pretty creative. Like, you got to think on your feet. So I give him a lot of props for coming up with that. But yeah, having one of your friends show up to be an extra on the set, I feel him.
Well, the funny thing too about this guy was when you meet him, you find out they're friends, and he said, we partied a lot in high school, and meaning they did drugs, and they said, no, we don't do it anymore. But it's just hysterical because his best friend is just a clueless, clearly affected by the drugs he took years ago dude who's just willing to help out his best friend, and the best friend just rolls with it, right? It's sweet and hysterical and a little sad, I guess, but still a wonderful film. So
I'm going to have to check it out. All right.
American
Well, my
movie.
recommendation on DocuView Deja Vu is was something that I just learned about on this trip. Actually, Mindy Cook gave me this recommendation. We were talking about, series that we like to watch. So it's not a documentary movie. It's a documentary series. You may have seen this. I don't know, but it's Somebody Feed Phil. Have you seen this?
Sorry, I got stuck on mute. Yes, we are a huge fan of Somebody Feed Phil, our whole family.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'd never seen or even heard about Somebody Feed Phil. But Somebody Feed Film is a documentary travel series. It's directed by John Bedelis. I don't know who that is. Presented by Philip Rosenthal. And they've got 5 seasons. Do you know who these people are?
Well, I know who Phil Rosenthal is. He's the creator, writer of Everybody Loves Raymond.
Oh, that's right. I did hear this. Yes. Yes. Yeah. And so this premiered on Netflix in 2018. And I think the 5th season was released this May, and it's been renewed for a 6th season. So I watched the beginning episodes. I've watched 2 of them. One of them was in Thailand, and the other one was in Venice. So those episodes, and really, I think it's just his childlike wonder. Phil is just like a little kid. I mean, you've seen more of them than I have, Josh. So tell me why you like it.
So, first of all, Phil Rosenthal is just a great guy. Like he's just a fun, likable person. He's always positive. There really isn't, much to the show other than him meeting with friends and trying foods and loving everything he tries. And he's silly throughout it. So there isn't it doesn't like get into like a lot of education. I mean, he tells you where you are and he introduces you to different foods, but it's lighthearted. It's not heavy or deep in education or things like that. So it's funny. It is inspiring. It does make you want to go to these places, try these foods. And at the end of every episode, he does a Zoom call with his parents,
Yeah.
where this older Jewish couple who are hysterical,
Yeah.
and they either have trouble with the Zoom or they don't understand why he's doing what he's doing. And I think this is Phil's the guy who said he grew up on like just meat and potatoes and just had, and then he, grew up and traveled the world and experienced, just his eyes and mouth were open to all these wonderful things available to us. And so he's kind of like introducing his folks to what's out there. And that's one of the best parts is him talking to his parents at the end of each
Yeah.
episode.
For sure. I love that part. And, I don't know if it changes over the course of the 5 seasons. The production value in the first season for me didn't seem very high. Like it
No.
really was this guy just going around with his friends and his brother, who's, a producer, and I don't know, stumbling through life or this experience. I mean, does it get any better over time in terms of
Oh,
cinematically or writing
yeah,
wise?
yeah,
Or
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it definitely gets better. I'm actually, that's why we need Jason. I'm trying to find, because it wasn't always called Somebody Feed Phil. It had a different name, but
okay.
they had to change it so that um so they could have the rights to the show or something like that. I don't remember exactly. But the production value does get better. I will mention that my favorite band, Lake Street Dive, does the opening song that they wrote for the show. So it's a fun song.
Yeah, it is a fun song, and I do agree with you, even when his parents are like, at one point, I think it was the Venice episode I watched, at the end, his wife, Phil's wife, called, the parents during this interview, and there's just funny things that happen and they roll with it, which is great. But I liked it because of that lighthearted, just that lighthearted, warm thing that's happening there. And then it did cause us to investigate one of the foods that he found in Thailand, the moon. Do you remember? It's like, oh, what's the name of it? I want to say moon shadow, but it's not moon shadow.
I don't know.
It's some sort of moon fruit or something, but it's a fruit in Thailand that's purple, and you open it up, and on the inside, it's got these little white segments. That's like the best fruit he's ever eaten in his life. And we actually found them here in France.
Oh,
We tried them out. They're super expensive and they are delicious. Just like he said, mangosteen. That's it.
oh,
Mangosteen. Yeah.
okay. I just found it. The series started on PBS and it was called "I'll Have What Phil's Having,"
Okay.
and then I think it was popular. He decided that he wanted to do it on his own or something. I don't know, but got away from public television, went to Netflix, and created Somebody Feed Phil. So it's like a derivative of that first show.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, there you go. There's your DocuView Deja Vu recommendations, everybody. Thank you, Josh. I can't wait to watch an American movie.
I think I need to rewatch it. It's pretty funny. Well, hey, Christian, we're excited to have you coming back here in just under a week, and I'm sure you'll have more stories to tell. We want to thank everyone for listening and contributing to Patreon. We appreciate your support. And also thank you for listening to Documentary First, where we believe everyone has a story to tell and you can be the one to tell it.
Yes, you can. Bye, everybody.